Freedom Island. Last time I did one of these logs, I had to cut it off real quick. I was just going along, and I seen my brother-in-law and Lauren. They might have had little ones with them, I'm not sure, but I don't want them to know anything about what I'm planning, about going to Detroit and looking into what my Uncle Boyce and these crazy people he's interacting with on the internet is doing. I got so many reasons to keep that to myself right now, and I'm just not sure. Boyce ain't exactly a criminal mastermind or anything like that, but he has always got by having like spies and bullies and people that he bribes to look in on people and stuff. He's got 3 ex-wives, and he had somebody watching each one of them, reporting on them, who they saw, what they bought at the grocery store, what kind of car they was driving, cars they got into, cars they got out of, what the license plate was. I don't even know that he really had that well formulated of a plan toward any of them, but I think he really wanted them to know he was watching them, that he'd collected their information, that he could use that against them and things he knew about them, and it was just like a threat there all the time. And even if Boyce really wouldn't do nothing to me, have somebody hurt me or worse, he could make my life a lot worser by telling every little thing he knows. When you're family, you know things about people. I haven't did anything that was real terrible, but nobody wants to have every little thing they did brought out and handed around for people to hear and know about them. I'm out here on the side porch now. It's too hot to be out here. There's a heat wave coming up from the south, and now it's coming up through Indianapolis, and I don't know where it's going, and it's too noisy. There's motorcycles and trucks and everything else going by. But last time I got caught out real quick. I didn't hear my brother shut the driver door, but Lauren's always wanted to kind of give the passenger door a bang, when she gets out. And I think she had groceries and stuff in her hands, and if they had the little ones with them, she might have had to been herding kids too. I don't know. I think she gave that truck door a good old bang there, and that helped me hear that they was coming, and I could shut down this log real quick. So the last time I was looking at this crazy ideology that these people, that Uncle Boyce and his cronies has taken the Old Testament part of the Bible, and they've took the stories and I started to say they changed them, but it's not so much they changed them, but they organized them in a certain way to make it into, like where I was talking about Charmaine and how when she had that bipolar disorder and how she got the funny papers and Quantum Leap on TV and the newspaper sports section and everything, and she made up a little story in her mind about people that she thought was watching her across the street through a telescope or something. She took all that information. Each one of them things was like a real thing, but then she took that and she organized it together into like a story, like it was connected together, but it was like 4 pieces off of 4 different puzzles. Well, they was all puzzle pieces, but they don't go together because they're not from the same puzzle, right? Some of these people is taking stuff out of the Bible, and it is in the Bible, but they're making it be more prominent, or more like the main thing when it's really kind of a thing off to the side, or they change the order of it around, or they make it seem like something caused something else when they were just things that happened. It wasn't one thing caused the other thing. It was just event and then, like another event. But when they want to squish it together into like a story, like on TV, like a TV movie or something, and make it all go together, they're good at doing that. And then the people that's listening to these podcasts and watching these videos and stuff, they want it to go together. They're a true believer before they ever got started. It makes sense to them. It goes right along with what they already thought, which makes them feel smart because they feel like they thought of it first. And now here's this guy coming along confirming what they always secretly knew, which is that the government's trying to get them, or Biden made an executive order to make the gasoline cost $5 or whatever their story is now. So where I had left off when I heard that truck door go whammo and got alerted to shut off the log thing on the laptop is I had got up to where Isaac's and Rebekah's sons, Jacob and Esau, had got born, and Esau got his birthright taken away from him by Jacob. And then these guys that are on the internet that Boyce studies with and communes with and plots and plans with and so on, they have took that story and now they've made it all be about what their plans are for God and white people and the country and the deep state and whatever else all this stuff is. They're mixing and matching that stuff all together like it's foreordained. You know what I mean? Then the part that came into this was about the wrong one being put in power. That the one who deserved to be on top, the one that deserved to get the birthright and have the true blessing, had lost it because the other one had tricked him, right? So we got that little story going on. Then you add to that that Jacob grew up and his son was Joseph. The Technicolor Dreamcoat and all that stuff, that was Joseph, was Jacob's son. Joseph had a son and his name was Ephraim. But then Jacob, who was Joseph's father and Ephraim's grandpa, adopted Jacob and took over being the dad. So there was more in this indoctrination information about how sometimes senior men or men with experience, that it was okay for one man to overcome another man's authority or direct his family or take charge if he was the more senior one and the more one that was more knowledgeable. So there was quite a bit on about that. Okay, so the Jews end up going with Moses and they go to the land of Canaan and they start out with 12 tribes. And you remember about the lost tribes. So there was 10 of the tribes faded away or disappeared or got sucked up into other ones, or, you know, I'm not in no Bible teacher or nothing like that, but they started out with 12 and only 2 of them stayed, you know, as a lineage, and then the other 10 tribes became so-called lost. And one of the ones that got lost was Ephraim, who was the one who was adopted by Jacob. He was Joseph's son, but he was adopted by his grandfather. So when Jacob adopted Ephraim, he also adopted Ephraim's brother, whose name was Manasseh. Then we jump kind of ahead. Like I said, it's all kind of confusing, and I'm trying to put it together the best I can. But we jump forward to Saul, and I don't mean like New Testament. You know, this is all Old Testament, right? So we're not talking about the Saul that turned into St. Paul. We're talking about the King Saul. And King Saul was the king before King David. Like a lot of people think King David was the first king, but then they don't think about it. Like with David and Goliath, that was before, you know, David was a boy then, and David and Jonathan being close and all that. And if they would think about it a little bit, they need to back up some. And the first one that was the king over everybody was Saul. And then later David was the king. And Jonathan, that was whatever kind of relationship he had with David. Jonathan was Saul's son. And David was a nobody. So now there was a whole part in this thing. Because like I said, they just take their ideology and they take the Bible and they turn it and twist it and paste it and stick things together that's just, it doesn't even say that in the book anywheres, or even anybody who really studies or understands. They just make up their own thing. So these, Ted Edward Jones is real big on this, and some of the other people he knows and stuff, is that David kind of seduced or tricked Jonathan into being gay or being like his boyfriend or being, inappropriately emotionally close with him as a way to work his way into the royal family, which was Saul's family, because David was just like a traveling musician and whatever, not anybody that was important. And then he was doing, like, he was taking some food to somebody, and then he got intercepted or somebody met him, and then he got drawn into the contact with the royal family. So now these people with these conspiracy things, they just had pages and pages and videos and sites about the evil infiltration of gay men mostly, I think, and then, women and people that change, what their gender was on their birth certificate and live a different way and things like that. They took all of that and turned it into, like, that's how, like, they, like these crazy gay people are going to come in and, like, take over the government, and that's what they want, is they don't want to get married, or have a house or rights or not get hit, or, that's not the reasons that people marched and did all that stuff. It was because they got these secret intrigues and tried to infiltrate, like what happened with Saul and King David. So the other thing about Saul is that sometimes he settled his battles with people in different ways. And one of them was with the David and Goliath thing. Like, it started out where Saul pitted David to fight against the Philistines to take Goliath out with the slingshot and all that, right? So sometimes he had like a proxy guy, and he would go and fight the battle one-on-one to represent the two sides. But there was other ways that Saul got his way. And sometimes how he got his way is he just wiped out people. He said God told him. Doesn't this sound familiar? It kind of reminds you a little bit of a story we just looked at a little while ago, where somebody that you interpret to be God tells you that you've got a right to take people out because they are not part of God's plan or whatever. So that's what Saul did. He slew these people whose name I can't say right. The Amalekites. Amalekites is the best I can do. And in part, the reason why it was okay for Saul to kill this people, it meant, I think Amalek was a place. And so they were the piece of people that lived there, I think. And the reason why it was okay for Saul, in his mind, to wipe them out, even though they were the thing is, they were part of the tribes. It was before the lost tribes got lost, right? And Ephraim was one of the grandson that got adopted and all that I was talking about. He had his own group of people he was the leader of one of the tribes. So you wouldn't think that it would be okay for Saul to get rid of the Amalekites, as like there's these dangerous people that wouldn't be part of civilization and was, roaming around and herding goats and living their own life or whatever. But his argument, and people were like, okay, is that he claimed that the Amalekites were descended down from Esau. And even though that is very confusing to me, because Esau was the one whose birthright was stolen. So it seems like it ought to be the other way around. Like, if you wanted to say somebody was an enemy, you ought to say that they are from Jacob, because Jacob stole the birthright. But then the brothers, they worked it out. So I think that's how these conspiracy guys are working it out. And so somehow, even though Jacob stole that birthright, it was still okay to get rid of descendants of Esau because he didn't get the birthright, like even if it got stole off of him. And I really can't even think about it very much more, or it starts making my head spin around. It's like back to the Nancy and the Sluggo and the quantum leap and all that. So Saul had a son. Well, he had more than one son, but he had a son that makes Amalekite be a piece of cake to say. And here, I wrote it down here. His son that became, he must have been the oldest son because he became the king. Saul threw himself down on his sword in battle. Like some of his other sons got killed in battle, and he threw himself on his sword, I guess, because he lost. I'm a little getting too, I better not say any more about any of that because I don't want to cause a lot of Bible scholarship trouble, but it was something like that, I think. And when Saul died, his son was named Ishbosheth. Ishbosheth. That's if I copied it down right. Another one of those things, like I was saying about Isaac, because he became a father at 40 years old. King Saul's son took the throne when he was 40 years old. So somehow that seemed like super important to them, with a lot of like putting it in red bold type and stuff like that in these stories. So then Saul had some sons that didn't get killed in the battle, and then Ishbosheth, whatever his name was, must have died because King David got on the throne. And then after King David got on the throne, there was a famine in a certain area. And supposedly God now told David more people that would be okay to be murdered. He didn't tell David to murder him, but he told David that he could allow people to murder him. And there was people, who it really was the Gibeonites. But the people that made this website put the Gideonites. And it wasn't Gideon, Gideon. That's not it. That wasn't it. Gideon was, remember about Manasseh and how he was the brother of Ephraim. So Gideon was a warrior, and he was in Manasseh's lost tribe. So that was wrong. So on the website, but I got it sorted out, and I figured it out that it wasn't Gideon, it was Gibeonites, and Gibeon must have been someplace again that people lived. And the Gibeonites said that they had been treated bad. Saul's doing from Saul's family, that if they hadn't treated Gibeonites bad, God wouldn't have sent a famine. And so the Gibeonites said that they thought that what they needed to make the world right and end the famine was that they had to kill some of Saul's sons. And David said, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That's just what God told me. And that's what happened. And then many, many other things was in there. I mean, I got to a point where I couldn't kind of start to read it. Partly I was getting all the Gideons and the Sauls and the Pauls, and I got kind of like dizzy because, like I said, people just go in and pick and pull, and they get different parts out of the Bible and they put them together, and it's like if you was trying to do modern, well, not modern history, but not like Bible history, and you would think that Egypt and the mummies and the Model T Ford and the launch to the moon was all in the same timeline. It would be like that. They're just taking and mixing it together. There was a part where they were telling some of the story in one of the narratives there, that they were all, they get together on these boards and they all put in comments and stuff like that. And one of the illustrations that was for the next section of Learned, it was just giving me like a spinning headache, because it was the fiery finger writing on the wall. And I thought, that's not even any of this part of the story. That's Daniel in the lion's den and Nebuchadnezzar. That's a whole different, So I thought to myself, you can't just take and just mix this together. It doesn't even make sense. But I guess what I was saying earlier when I was doing this is, when you want it to make sense, because you need it to, because you want to explain what you want to do, and you can't even think about it in your right mind, or maybe thinking about all this stuff makes you crazy. I don't know if they was crazy before they got started, or if they started thinking this way and then they started getting crazy. I don't know which one it was, but I thought I was pretty tolerant of different kinds of points of view. I was the other way around when I was a kid. everybody thought I was too tolerant, and if people had new different ideas or something was a little bit different, I was interested in it. I mean, I'm not saying I believed everything that everybody said and just thought it was like gospel truth or whatever, but what if there was new ideas or new ways of thinking about things, I was interested. And one thing that people say in Indianapolis is they joke around about how you ought to go to Central State, which they don't even have anymore, but they used to have a hospital here that was called like Central Indiana Hospital or Asylum. It wasn't called a hospital. Central Indiana Asylum for the Insane, I think, or something like that. And that was like a long time, like Abraham Lincoln time, all the way up to, well, they had horrible things in the paper about it. I don't even want to talk about it, but like when I was little, I found some newspaper articles and stuff that my folks had hid away in the closet with their winter coats, some old yellow things of the Indianapolis Star. So I don't remember which one. I think it was the Star. That was the morning paper then. And they had wrote in the 1960s, so it was before, it was obviously my parents' time. And they had written down about what all went on in that hospital. But, I'm sure it wasn't like that anymore by the time I was born. I don't even know if it was still there anymore, but they had quit all that horrible stuff they used to do. But it was a bad place. It wasn't no place anybody wanted to go. And it was a way of saying, if you lived in Indianapolis, if people thought what you're thinking was too different, they would joke and say about putting you in Central State. And what it meant was that they didn't think your thoughts went together. So I learned real early not to say a lot of the things I was thinking about new ideas because it just made people nervous. But then they can just turn around and do this religious things that doesn't even make sense. They can take it where it just patched together with like taking religion and turn it into something that's like out of movies or Harry Potter or something. I just don't understand. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is there was quite a bit more on this website material about their beliefs and how they got to start bringing the father back in the family, and how just like God told the different Bible warriors to overthrow corrupt nations and to put the correct birthright back and undo women's deceptive ways and all that stuff. There was much, much, much more about it, but I decided that looking at any more of it I was going to start turning into them just by mental exposure of it, I spent an hour or two over there with Charmaine when she was thinking about Quantum Leap and Nancy and Sluggo and stuff, and that was making me kind of cuckoo just from that. So you can imagine what immersing myself in this online nonsense is doing to my brains, and I don't think I need to know any more about it. I see enough to know how serious they are. They mean it. And it's put me on the road, not like, Saul who turned into Paul on the road to Damascus. Well, it's put me on the road to Detroit. I got to firm up and get some plans together with this lady that's got the house I can stay in up there. And I'm going to look in my bus schedules and just get myself organized when I get my check, get my pocket money together and everything I need, my COVID masks and all that stuff. And I don't know how long I'm going to go up for, but I got to kind of secure everything. I don't want to leave anything at this house for them to snoop through while I'm gone and all that. And I don't know what I'm going to tell them about what I'm doing. I got quite a bit to figure out because I'm not a very good spy. But somebody's got to go up there and spy on them. I think that I am the least likely candidate for this job of anybody practically on the earth, but I'm the only one that sees it, and so I'm the only one that's got to do it. So, and I can't even think about right now about making all the plans, but at least I got my list now of my notes I made about what their special messages are on the website, and I'm going to keep it and write it down and put, take a notebook with me and maybe email it so I've got like on my phone or the laptop so I know where my notes are at. I feel like I got started on that. So now I got my ideas about it together. So I just got to get all them little details, bus tickets and all that stuff.